Well, I really wanted to keep my Elon Musk comments to myself, but I've heard too much. And actually, like, some of this shit, my channel is actually based on this interview. So, Don Lemon and Elon Musk had an interview. I guess, like, Don Lemon had hired, or Elon Musk hired Don Lemon, whatever his name is, to do something with Twitter. I don't know what. He ends up doing an interview. Destiny covers the interview. I would actually highly recommend you watch Destiny's, like, don't watch the interview on your own, but unless you just have time, like, watch the interview on its own and then watch the commentary. I think you need to watch that interview with commentary for a few reasons, because some shit. Let's just start here. Elon Musk is from South Africa. Unlike other countries in South Africa that had quite a lot of like homogeny in terms of like racial dynamics, South Africa specifically is known for racial apartheid, which was like so awful that it was like kind of like one of the worst. Like Jim Crow in America was based off of apartheid in South Africa. Like they modeled it very similarly. It was a racial caste system. That was also very similar to like the caste system that is present now and has been historically present in India, right? And it puts black people at the bottom. Now, ironically enough, Elon Musk was in South Africa in high school as a white person during apartheid. Like, this isn't even like, this is actually insane. And he literally says, his white ass is in America saying to Don Lennon, he says, how did the color of my skin impact my life chances? A white person from South Africa who grew up during apartheid is asking that question. Bro, like, we don't even, that's crazy. Like, it's not about diversity. Fuck diversity and inclusion. I also think that diversity and inclusion is a bad idea. I think that in the tech industry specifically, we should have exclusion and segregation. We should have like different apps based on how you are, what you want, where you have started, the privileges that you don't have, the privileges that you do have. It's just some shit from the interview is actually so funny. And I can say this just because like I know people who have friends who work at Tesla. And it's real bad there. Also, and I'm talking about black people who work there. Now, all the people who work there have quite a lot of issues with like how much of a like servant camp it is. Like you just work all the time because obviously like Elon wants to be hyper successful. And to do that, you just work all the time. But the culture is real bad. Like when just imagine this. That would be like if I was to talk about how okay, this is a good example. Let's say that I work at Popeyes. I'm just giving a random example. So I'm a waitress. I work at Popeyes. And, right, like I work there. So, like, every day I see the customers who come in. I know the things on the menu. I know the drinks. I pretty much know how much stuff is cost because I've worked there for a year. Let's say I've worked there for a year. Now, for somebody to ask me like, oh, like, you know, what's the most common, what's a side item that you get at Popeyes? I should probably be able to answer that. I've been working there for a fucking year. Elon Musk grew up in South Africa like all throughout high school. And then like when he went to college, that's when he like went to either Europe or America or something. But he grew up in apartheid. So like for him to be like that unaware of what was happening in the place that he fucking grew up, and then to start coming to America, which also has a very long history of anti-black racism, and then to hop on the side of the argument that is like, I do not support diversity and inclusion, which would benefit black people. I'm not saying that Elon Musk is a neo-Nazi. I'm just saying he's really good at wearing the clothes. Like, that's insane. Like, I don't even, that's like actually like, it's not even surprising. Like, I like my white supremacy right in front of my face. Like, if there are any white supremacist subscribers, shadow followers or something, feel free to comment. You are welcome here. I really honestly wholeheartedly like my white supremacy like right in front of my face at all times. Like if you are the person who's like anti-black and you're just like fuck those niggers or what, if you are that person, I like it straight to my face. Right? Like my grandma was like that. I like my anti-blackness like straight up. Like I like to know what it is, you know. We don't need to like um how do you say it? We need to beat around the bush, okay? Because I think that's the one thing I hated about growing up in Berkeley. Well, I think I like it because it's made me extremely passive aggressive. Like being a child and being like going to school with people like people don't realize that like UC Berkeley has a very long history of eugenics. Like departments and researchers who've gone there to study, they call it like biology. It's a part of like the biology department, but it's really trying to understand why black people are stupid. Like that's where the research is trying to go. Now, I think what Elon Musk was saying is getting to a point that could make some sense, but he just misses the end of the statement. So what he starts to say in the beginning of the conversation is like, the reason that I don't think diversity and inclusion is a good idea is because if we lower the standard for people in medical, and he uses surgeons specifically, he says if we lower the standards for surgeons, then we will have people who are more prone to making mistakes during surgery because the test scores for them were lowered, which means that intellectually they are not as smart or something, and so more people will die. Now, Don Lemon kind of gets to a point, but I don't think he does a very good job of like exploring that in more depth. Though I'll link some other videos that I personally made that kind of explore this topic, but I just want to talk specifically about why that doesn't matter. Right now, there's this conversation around, we could call it like, how do you say, like cross-cultural communication, culture fit, those sort of things. Like the people who are in the classes together, you know, I'm talking about like maybe like K through 12 or whatever. Let's say you go to one of those like private elite schools where everyone kind of grew up in the same socioeconomic class system, and they, you know, they like similar music, they like similar activities, they like similar foods, they like literally move in these like very similar ways. And people who are not outside of those groups and who didn't grow up with them, they're like not really like them. Now the problem is when you have something like medicine, something like dentistry, something like law, right? Those things actually impact everyone despite what your race is or what your socioeconomic status is. So what I mean by that is like everybody actually needs a doctor, not just white people and like not just black people. So if you have a situation kind of like the situation we have now, where we have like so many white doctors and so few black doctors, that means that you have a population, because there's still like 14% of the country is black, but not 14% of the doctors are black. So then that means you just have white doctors who are coming from different cultural backgrounds, different genetic backgrounds, different sociological backgrounds. They're completely different, but they're still working with this population of people. That means they don't understand the culture, they don't understand the language, they don't understand the people. It's like if I were to just like go to medical school, I'm not calling black people monkeys, but hear me out. Well, actually, let's use a different example here. Like I've got a kitten right here, right? So let's say I go to medical school and I go to like the UC Davis Medical School, right? Because that's in a community where like I grew up in and I went to undergrad in and all this stuff. And then all of a sudden I'm like, okay, actually now I'm going to go practice medicine on people in the remember where the Wuhan virus came from in China? Now I'm going to China now to be a doctor for the Wuhans. It's like, wait, you don't speak the language. Like people, their entire culture, their nutrition need, everything about their society is like different from me, but I have a medical degree though. So like, therefore somehow that's supposed to translate. You see how like, when you really think about that, like this actually doesn't make sense. Like even the degree on its own is like not really meaningful without the people. In certain disciplines where you are actually interacting with people, that is where the culture fit actually matters. And this is why kind of people started having the conversation about DEI in tech specifically, because these platforms and apps and shit are being consumed by people whose like social situations are so much different than the people who are building it, and they don't really understand the use case, any of it. This is why you've had like people from, I think that's happened in like, it was in Thailand or some part of Asia, where there was like literally like kind of like how do you say it? It was like a targeted attack on a very particular group of people that started with Facebook Messenger and platform or something, where people were posting hate speech, but the hate speech immediately turned to violence, and it turned to like a small genocide. And then people like they sued Facebook, the platform, for inciting violence, even though it was like specific users on the platform who were doing these things. And technically this is like a government problem. Like the government needs to step in and stop people from inciting violence based on Facebook posts. That's the truth. But I mean that they're using technology to actually end lives. Now, how can I say this? Like when I continue to talk about abortion in the Black community, the reason why I continue to say that it's kind of like, not kind of, it's extremely necessary, is because like the fact is, like, this sort of situation where Destiny makes this point, but he makes it really fast, where he basically says like, yeah, but basically, if you have a whole bunch of people who come from lower socioeconomic groups, and they have less education and less opportunity and less training, then yeah, they're not going to become pilots, because like those career paths take a lot more training and education and money to enter them. So we want people to have more education to do those things so that it's safer for everyone. And I think the problem is, like, no matter how you grow up in life, like if you like grow up extremely poor or extremely rich, the probability that you're going to take a plane in your life is high. And so it's not fair to say like we're just not going to have pilots who are from particular socioeconomic groups or racial groups because they don't have the training, when the training wasn't offered. Like it would almost be like if you were to show, I mean, this is a kind of a cheap example, but if you were to show someone how to open a door, right? Like they don't know what a door is, they don't know how to open it, but let's say over like 2 weeks you explain to some, it probably doesn't take that long, it probably would take like an hour or 2 hours, right? Maybe a couple minutes. You show someone what a door is, you show them how to open the door. Now they kind of know what a door is, and they can maybe take that analogy and apply it to bigger things. And you could talk about elevators, you could now talk about maybe like submarines, enclosed spaces and entering them, and closed off facilities, and like what the like compartments. You can start to extend these like smaller ideas into like bigger and bigger conceptual blocks that might help you understand society a bit more. Now, kind of what Elon is saying is like, yeah, but what we have right now are these like rigid test scores that are able to determine at a particular point in time, like, because you're taking those like SAT tests when you're like 18 years old. So based on your socioeconomic stance and preparation up until 18, which is a very like insulated period of time, because like you're very close to your parents during that time. And especially if we know about like urban youth, they're actually not very close to their parents. Their parents don't have much like information, resources, tools to give them. They can't enter spaces that cost a lot of money because they don't have any money. So it's like, okay, so now these people are expected to like go out and do something. I don't know what they could do. What could they do? Like, this is kind of an example, but I'm just going to give it. So a couple of my coworkers at one place that I work, I am in Tennessee. They are from Tennessee their entire lives, but they went to Rolling Loud, which was in Los Angeles. Now, 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, they told me they were going to Rolling Loud. This is like a group of them. And I was like, oh, that's cool. So they couldn't tell me like where. They knew they were going to California. They didn't know which part of California they were going to. California is huge. I'm from Northern California. It turns out Rolling Loud is in Southern California. Specifically, it was in LA, right? If you know anything about Hollywood, everyone's heard about LA. Oh my God, LA, Hollywood, right? They didn't really know that. So then today they come back, and I was kind of talking to them about the festival or whatever. Now, I think this was all of their like first festival ever. So like if I'm thinking about like my own experience in festivals, there's like Burning Man, Coachella, Bonnaroo is out here. There's a bunch of like smaller festivals that there's so many fucking festivals, right? And like this was their first festival, and I was like, oh, okay, like which stages did you go to? Because I didn't even go to Rolling Loud, but I saw that like Big Sean had come out of retirement or something, or raising his baby. He did a set. Kanye West did a set where he didn't even use the mic. He just like let his record play and put on a little ski mask and like waved his hands. Those are kind of like some of the highlights that I saw. I think Nicki Minaj performed. But there are multiple stages happening at Rolling Loud. And it turns out like these people didn't even know that there were multiple stages. So they just stayed at one stage the whole time and just watched the show on that one stage. Like usually like when I go to festivals, I look at the entire lineup and I look at like time slots, and then I'm like, okay, so if I know they're like, I just pick out the artist who I want to see, and then I make sure to go to that stage in enough time so I can see that artist, right? And then I make sure to get enough time to go to the next stage to see I only go to the stages that have the artist that I like, and they usually like split them up so that like they won't have, you know, all the big artists on one stage, and all like sometimes they'll have like a hip hop stage if it's like Rolling Loud I think has more than just like strictly like trap hip hop music, but I think they stayed at kind of like that trap stage because it was like Sexy Red Future, Kodak Black. It was, yeah, so it's like if you're that like trap hip hop person, that would be like the stage that I think would pique your interest. But it's fascinating to just think about like this was their experience of the festival, and I'm like, damn, like they did that much different than like what I would have done if I were to like go to a festival now. Not the point, whatever, but you know, it's cool that they went. Now they've gone to California. I guess lots of people like to have like the California story. California, oh, California's so cool, whatever. But my point is, and I've said this before, with medicine and those tests, if you want to be in medicine, if you want to be a doctor and you study hard enough, like all the clinical, there are shows, let's go back for a second. There are TV shows like Grey's Anatomy is a really good one. House, I think, is also a pretty decent one. I think Grey's Anatomy might be the best one though that we have right now, which kind of show after medical school, so the residency. So medical school is all the stuff that you do in the books. You're like, you know, learning all of these techniques and practices, and some people are really good at that sort of like studying, and then other people are more hands-on, where in the residency they will shine. And then some people who are like Christina or like Meredith seem to have like a good combination of both, where they can thrive in book knowledge and they can also thrive in like the real world, the residency part, which is like hands-on. And now a big thing with medicine and with like human biology and just humans, like, which is why I appreciate House so much. House's biggest quote is like, everyone lies. Everyone lies. So things that look very clear on paper in diagnostics, where, you know, a physician is like diagnosing something, the problem is, like, this is why a lot of the Christians right now and the conservatives keep talking about like God this and God that, because another human didn't invent all of the other humans to be like, well, I made it, so I know how it works. Also, there's like epigenetic sort of things where like your environment can literally change your DNA and change like your biology. So you do have to take that into account in some aspects. And it's just like, no matter how many books that people read, no matter how many cases they've seen in the past, every person is an individual. And especially if you don't understand anything about that person's like culture, you don't understand what they're going through in their own lives, you don't understand their past, it's like the thing that is sitting here right in front of you might not make any sense because you've never seen it before, you've never written about it. Which is why I continue to say I think it's really important for Black people, especially Black women, to show up online and tell their stories in their own voices, in their own ways, so that we can have more training data that is about, actually, like, it happened like this, actually I did this, actually this is how it looked, actually this is how it felt, because we don't have that. No one's been recording that in history, and especially in terms of like American media, all we have are like slave stories that they just have fucking nothing to do with like the way that people are currently living. So I'm saying all that to say that us having this like very large percentage of white doctors now is actually just not helpful for the large and looming population of color that we have living here now, and that is continuing to grow. Like, having white doctors who actually don't understand this population of people and not training more doctors to be able to meet the need is a really bad idea. It's an awful idea, and there's no amount of tests that are going to make up for that. And just making whatever they're saying about the bar being higher, the bar being lower, I don't know. Like, people are going to need doctors, and unless you just build more robotic doctors, that like you could just put a robot then who had gone through medical school training and just put that doctor basically in hospitals of color or something, where they could, and then put them in like, you know, classrooms of color, so that they could use training data to then be able to like understand the culture and society of that group, because they're going to work in the group and not like some, because you can't, and not, it can't be just like a person who's been socialized in, who as like a white person in white society, understanding white people, and then now move them into like a black society and expect them to be effective. That isn't true. And Don Lemon kind of makes this point where he's saying, yeah, but the doctors right now are making a lot of mistakes. The surgeons right now are like fucking up. So is that because their test scores weren't high? And it's like, no, it's not because their test scores weren't high. There's a lot of other reasons. And Elon Musk is not even touching on that topic at all, or even acknowledging that the doctors right now are making mistakes, and that also needs to be accounted for, and there should be reasons for it, because people are actually dying right now from the people who did, you know, meet the test scores or whatever. And there's a lot of them. Like, malpractice suits are through the roof. Black women have the lowest is the birth rate, or the, how do you say it, like black maternal health in this country is very poor, because OBGYNs on the spectrum don't seem to know how to care for black women and their children. So the black women, mothers and babies, are dying. Also, black women are aborting. There's all these issues, right? And simply having a fewer number of doctors go to medical school who are black, because Elon Musk personally doesn't care about diversity and inclusion, it's not going to hurt Elon Musk and like his family specifically. He's white, right? There's already a more than enough doctors who are able and willing to serve his community. Those DEI and affirmative action spots are for people who are not white, like that 14% of black people who also need doctors, and who go to HBCUs. It doesn't matter in this case if their test scores are lower or not, because like the need is actually just not being met. Like, see how we need 14% of the population of doctors to be black. So yes, they're not meeting the same bar as everyone else, but there's only 4% right now who are even alive and able to do the job, because they even went through the program. Like, until you have that, what is that? It's like a 12% gap. Am I right? Is that? No, it's like a 10%. We need a 10% increase in black doctors just to meet the current need, for it to be like equitable. And we're not even talking about the other races of people, right? Like, the Latinx community has a similar issue. There's not that many Asian people in this country now, so like that's not an issue yet. But these problems are nuts, and I think that it, like, he's like trying to solve it's like trying to police a community that you aren't a part of. This is why race is a conversation. It's actually really important to have it. Like, the South Africans are wild though. Like, just imagine you actually grew up in apartheid to be like, how did my race impact my life chances? Like, that's crazy. Sir, you grew up in apartheid. Like, you were actually there. That's like if I were to grow up in Jim Crow and be like, well, yeah, I don't know, Jim Crow didn't impact me at all. Like, every fucking school is called like Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Rosa Parks Boulevard, and you're like, I don't know.